Chapter 13. Doubts. My companion said, "You claim the Quran does not contradict itself, so what do you say about this verse? So whoever wills may believe, and whoever wills may disbelieve. And the other verse that seems to contradict it. But you cannot will except by the will of God. Furthermore, the Quran states regarding the guilty, their testimony will be recorded and they will be questioned. And, indeed, it is a reminder for you and your people, and you will be questioned." Yet, in another instance, it says the criminals will not be asked about their sins, and they will be recognized by their mark and they will be seized by the forelocks and the feet. At one point, it says that no one will bind the criminal and no one will secure his binding, implying that each person will be responsible for his own punishment. Your own soul is sufficient as a reckoner against you this day. Then again it says, then in a chain whose length is 70 cubits he will be confined. I said to him, these are not contradictions. Let us reflect on them together. So whoever wills may believe and whoever wills may disbelieve is a clear verse indicating human freedom and choice. However, we did not seize this freedom from God by force. Rather, God granted it to us by His will. Thus, the second verse comes to explain this. But you cannot will except by the will of God. This means that human freedom exists within the divine will, not in opposition to it. So a person's freedom can contradict God's pleasure by choosing disobedience, but it cannot contradict His will, for it always remains within the scope of His will, even if it goes against His pleasure. This is a subtle point we explained in the topic of free will and divine decree, where we said that divine decree is precisely the enactment of free will, because God decrees for the servant according to the nature of his intention and heart. This means that God wills for the servant precisely what the servant wills for himself through his intention and the choice of his heart. Thus, the servant is divinely decreed towards his own choice. This implies there is no coercion, no duality, and no contradiction, and that divine decree is the very essence of free will. It is one of the most delicate matters in understanding the mystery of free will and predestination. What you call a contradiction is in reality the clarification of that mystery. As for the verses concerning the reckoning, each verse refers to a different group. There are those who will be questioned and their testimony taken. There are those whose sins will be so numerous that they will be evident on their faces. These are the ones who will be recognized by their mark and seized by the forelocks and the feet. At one point, it says that no one will bind the criminal and no one will secure his binding, implying that each person will be responsible for his own punishment. Your own soul is sufficient as a reckoner against you this day. Then again it says, then in a chain whose length is 70 cubits he will be confined. As for the verses concerning the reckoning, each verse refers to a different group. There are those who will be questioned and their testimony taken. There are those whose sins will be so numerous that they will be evident on their faces. These are the ones who will be recognized by their mark and seized by the forelocks and the feet. There is he who is own reckoner, tormenting himself with regret and binding himself with remorse, the one whose bonds no one will secure. Then there are the great tyrannical criminals who will lie to God even when facing him, swearing false oaths while in the great standing on the day God resurrects them all. They will swear to him as they swear to you, thinking they have some basis, but they are indeed the liars. These are the ones who will be dragged on their faces and bound in chains. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali interprets these chains as the chains of causes. And what is your opinion regarding the Quran's discourse on divine knowledge? That with him is the knowledge of the hour, he sends down the rain, he knows what is in the wombs, no soul knows what it will earn tomorrow, and no soul knows in what land it will die. The Quran states that God has exclusively reserved this knowledge for himself. No one else knows it. With him are the keys of the unseen. None knows them except him. So what about the doctor today, who can know what is in the wombs and predict whether it is male or female? And what about the scientists who induce artificial rain through chemical methods? The Quran did not speak about sending down just any rain. It spoke about sending down al-gaith, the abundant, heavy rain that falls in quantities sufficient to change the fate of a nation, relieving it and transferring it from a state of drought to one of fertility and prosperity. Rain of this magnitude cannot be produced by an experiment. As for God's knowledge of what is in the wombs, it is a comprehensive, all-encompassing knowledge, not merely knowing the gender of the fetus, male or female, but knowledge of what that newborn will be, its affair, what it will do in the world, and its entire history from the day it is born until the day it dies. Something no doctor can know. And what about the story of God's throne, which you say encompasses the heavens and the earth, and God's throne which is carried by 8? Your own mind can encompass the heavens and the earth, and you are a mere human who is insignificant. So how could God's throne not encompass them? The earth, the sun, the planets, the stars, and the galaxies are all upheld in space by the power of God. So why be astonished about the carrying of the throne? And what is the kursi, and what is the throne? Tell me, what is an electron? Tell me, what is electricity? Tell me, what is gravity? Tell me, what is time? You do not know the essence of anything. So how can you ask me what the kursi and the throne are? The world is full of mysteries, and these are but some of them. And the ant that spoke in the Quran and warned the rest of the ants about the approach of Solomon and his army. An ant said, "O ants, enter your dwellings." If you read a little bit about entomology today, you would not ask this question. The science of entomology is replete with extensive studies on the language of ants and the language of bees. The language of ants is now a confirmed reality. How could functions be distributed in a colony of hundreds of thousands with organization and the relay of commands and instructions amongst this immense multitude without a language for communication? There is no room for wonder that an ant knew Solomon. Did not man know God? And how does God erase what he has written in the tablet of his decree? Does his Lord make mistakes as we make mistakes in our accounts, so we erase and confirm? Or does he reconsider as we reconsider? God erases the bad deed by inspiring you to do a good deed. And he says in his book that good deeds remove bad deeds. And he says about his righteous servants, we inspired them to do good deeds, establish prayer, and give zakah. Thus God erases without anyone erasing him. And this is the secret of the verse from Surah Al-Ra'd that you mentioned. And what is your opinion of the verse, I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me? Was God in need of our worship? Rather, we are the ones in need of worshiping him. Do you worship a beautiful woman out of imposed duty, or do you delight in this love, become ecstatic, and find happiness in tasting her beauty? Likewise, God is the most beautiful of all that is beautiful. When you know his majesty, beauty, and power, you worship him and find in your worship the ultimate happiness and ecstasy. For us, worship only comes through knowledge, and God is only worshipped through knowledge. The knowledge of God is the pinnacle of all knowledge, and the end of a long journey of knowledges that begins from birth. The first thing a child knows at birth is its mother's breast. That is the first pleasure. Then it recognizes its mother, father, family, society, and environment. Then it begins to exploit this environment for its benefit, finding it to be another great breast that bestows wealth, gains, and pleasures.
From the earth comes gold and diamonds, from the sea pearls, and from plants fruits and produce. That is the second pleasure in the journey of knowledge. Then it moves from knowledge of its earthly environment to reach for the heavens, setting foot on the moon and launching ships to Mars, navigating towards the unknown to enjoy a greater pleasure, the pleasure of exploring the universe. Then after this navigation, it returns to ask itself, who am I who has known all this? And begins a new journey of knowledge into itself, aiming to know itself and control its energies for its own benefit and the benefit of others. That is another pleasure. Then the pinnacle of knowledge, after knowing the self, is knowing the Lord who created that self. With this final knowledge, man reaches the peak of happiness because he meets the complete, the transcendent, the most beautiful of all that is beautiful. This is the journey of the worshiper through worship, all of it filled with flowers and delights. If there is hardship in life, it is because the one who picks roses must have his hand pricked by thorns, and the one who aspires to infinite heights must toil towards them. But the worshipper's arrival at the knowledge of his Lord and the removal of the veil from his eye, how magnificent it is. The Sufi wearing the patched cloak says, "We are in a pleasure which, if kings knew, they would fight us for it with swords." That is the pleasure of true worship, and it is the share of the worshipper. But God is independent of it and of all worlds. We now worship him by a command of obligation, but we worship him because we have known his beauty and majesty, and we do not find in worshiping him humiliation, but rather liberation and honor. Liberation from all worldly servitudes, liberation from lusts, instincts, and greed for wealth. We fear God, so we no longer fear anyone after him, nor do we fear anyone. He who fears God has courage. Worship is freedom, and humility before him is honor. Knowledge of him is certainty. That is worship. We are the ones who reap its profits and joys. As for him, he is rich, independent of everything. God created us to give to us, not to take from us. He created us to bestow upon us from his perfections. He is the all-hearing, the all-seeing, and he has given us hearing and sight. He is the all-knowing, the all-aware, and he has given us intellect to acquire from his knowledge and senses to acquire from his awareness. He says to his close servant in the sacred hadith, "My servant, obey me, and I will make you divine, so that you can say to a thing, be. And it is." He did not do this for Jesus, peace be upon him, yet Jesus would raise the dead by his leave, create from clay the form of a bird by his leave, and heal the blind and the leper by his leave. Servitude to God, therefore, is the opposite of servitude in our conception. Servitude in our conception is for the master to take the best from the servant. But servitude to God is the opposite. It is for the master to give his servant limitless blessings and to bestow upon him endless perfections. Then God says, "I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me." Its inner meaning is, I did not create the jinn and mankind except to give to them, grant them love, goodness, honor, and might, and to cloak them in the garment of honor and vicegerency. So the Lord Master is rich, independent of our worship, and we are the ones in need of this worship, the honor, the gifts, and the boundless blessings. The generous God has permitted us to enter his presence at any time, without an appointment, and to remain in his presence as long as we wish, calling upon him as much as we can. Merely by spreading the prayer rug and saying, Allahu Akbar, we enter his presence and ask him for what we wish. Where is the king whom we can enter upon without an appointment and stay in his presence as long as we wish? In this regard, our master, the righteous servant, Sheikh Muhammad Metwali al-Shurawi, says in beautiful poetry, "My soul considers it an honor that I, a servant, am received by my Lord without appointments. He is in his holy sanctum, the most honorable, but I meet him whenever and wherever I love. And he says, "Show me a creation whose maker inspects it 5 times a day," referring to the 5 daily prayers, "and it does not wear out." These are some of the inner meanings of the verse that aroused your doubts. If you were to contemplate it, it would only evoke in you astonishment and admiration.